Yes, I'm still in rehab, but I did see some things before my knee operation. And did they go big or small with the shows that I saw? Let's start with The Big Dipper from the York Theatre Company, with book by Catherine Filou, John Daggett, music and lyrics by Jimmy Roberts, with additional lyrics by John Daggett. Joan Wilkes is being forced to sell her family in The Big Dipper in Bigelow, New York, near Niagara Falls. Mr. Sapper, a longtime resident, trying to persuade her not to sell, but she needs the money for her son Dez's college education. Meantime, a monster blizzard has made bus travel impossible, so the sirens of Syracuse are forced to stay there. They are straight men who cross dress and perform at competitions. There was also a group of Amish on the bus. Amos, a strict dad, his teenage daughter Rebecca, Eli, who fancies Rebecca, and Amos's neighbor, who fancies him. Bonnie Haskins, the Highland Corps regional manager, is constantly after Joan to sell. Will the sirens make it to the competition in time? Will Rebecca escape her dad and get to Niagara Falls? She wants to see it to honor her mother who died and never got the chance to see Niagara Falls. Will Joan really sell her family legacy? This is sort of the old fashioned musical that I just loved. The music was wonderful and really carried the story along. I especially liked the fact that it took place around Niagara Falls, where I grew up. In fact, in one of the projections, they showed my hometown of Dunkirk. The cross dressing straight men reminded me of Harvey Firestein's play Casa Valentina. The Amish family was very touching, the single father doing his best to raise his daughter, and the daughter wanting so much to honor her mother. The Big Dipper will leave you starry eyed. So I give this a happy face.
Elf the Musical is now playing through January 4th at the Marriott Marquis Theater, with a book by Thomas Meehan and Bob Martin, music by Matthew Schuyler, lyrics by Chad Begulin. It is based upon the holiday classic film by New Line Cinema, written by David Berenbaum, Elf, originally starring Will Ferrell. Elf tells the story of Buddy the Elf, a human who escapes into Santa's sleigh and ends up living his life in the North Pole, somewhat miscasted amongst the other elves. It's not until he learns that his true home is in New York City that he takes himself upon an adventure to go and try to find his dad. Filled with misadventures and laughs along the way, Elf is a holiday classic, a heartwarming story, and really just gets everybody in the spirit to spread Christmas cheer. The stage adaptation is pretty much a direct rip of the film. I really enjoyed the energy of the ensemble. I thought Gray Henson, who plays Buddy, is like a dead ringer for Will Ferrell. Very high energy entirely throughout the show. Great special effect. Overall, I found it to be a really like I said, uplifting and fun show. It was quite a diverse audience that was there. It's a nice celebration of the holidays and celebration of New York City. Yeah, I give it a happy face.
And I loved it. Apparently, this elf Buddy was this baby that crawled into Santa's sled, and that's how he ended up in the North Pole, thinking he was, that Santa was his dad, and he thought he was an elf, and then to find out he's really a human being and have to deal with that. And when he comes to New York City, he is basically an elf out of the North Pole. And but there's a love interest. He falls in love, and he's so sweet and innocent, and he's just filled with pure Christmas spirit all the time. And he can't imagine anyone not filled with Christmas spirit. So it's just such a, like you say, it's just a delightful, funny story. And there's a hysterical scene with all the Santas about being a Santa at Christmas time. It is so funny. It's a clever, funny, wonderful, and like you say, it just so puts you in the mood. It's a perennial favorite, and and no matter who plays Elf or who does it, but every year it should be like the Radio City Rockettes. You should always put that on your Christmas list to see. So I'm giving this a major happy face too.
A Wonderful World, the Louis Armstrong musical, is an autobiographical musical of the life of trumpeter, bandleader, and singer Louis Armstrong and the four women he married. The great strength of this musical is the great music of Louis Armstrong and James Monroe Iglehарт's bravura performance as Louis. He more than captures an essence of Louis Armstrong. He inhabits Louis, down to the gravelly voice. The four women who play Louis's wives, Darlicia Searcy, Kim Exum, Dion Figgins, and Jenny Harney Fleming, all give good performances and are excellent singers. The weakness that this musical has is its book by Orrin Squires. It just doesn't quite flesh out Louis. Happy face minus from me.
It did show, which surprised me, is what a cat he was. I mean, he basically abandoned one wife for the next wife, for the next wife, and he treated all of them quite horrible until he came to the last one, who he stuck with and treated decently. So I'm kind of thinking, I don't really like Louis Armstrong. He's not a very nice man, but he's a wonderful musician, and I love the music. And of course, and there was splashy, musical numbers. I mean, this just really lends itself to being a good musical. So, I mean, it was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it immensely. Except for like discovering what a cat he was, but I would give it a happy face. Delia Ephron's Left on 10th deals with the death of her husband, who she's been with for 38 years. In disconnecting his landline, Verizon crashed her internet. She's in Verizon holding hell, which prompts her to write an article about the evils of Verizon. Peter, who lives in California while Delia lives in New York, emails her to tell her he read the Verizon article. Apparently, they dated a while ago after being set up by Nora, her older sister, who had died of leukemia. They end up corresponding and developing a new relationship. Peter's wife had died of cancer, so they both knew what it felt like to lose a spouse. In the midst of this new relationship, Delia gets devastating news that she has leukemia like her sister Nora. Everyone is constantly reminding her that she is not her sister. This could have a different outcome. How will this affect the budding romance? Will this have a happy rom-com ending that Delia and Nora were so good at writing? Julia Margulies and Peter Gallagher were such a sympathetic couple that I was rooting for them from the outset. The supporting players, Peter Francis James and Kate McCluggage, appeared in a variety of roles, which contributed to this heartwarming story of getting over loss and disappointments to find joy again. I give this a happy face.
Left on 10 sounds like it could be a downer of a play, as it deals with loss, despair, and death. It is not, as it really deals with hopefulness, second chances, and catharsis. Juliana Margulies and Peter Gallagher give wonderful performances as Delia and Peter, respectively, and they have such great chemistry together. Peter Francis James and Kate McCluggage play a variety of roles, each in different costumes and wigs. It is no wonder they don't have split personalities by the end of the performance, but they keep each character so very separate. The play also has two dogs trained by the wonderful animal trainer and Tony honoree, William Berloni, Nessa Rose and Charlie, and they are just adorable. Happy face.
Circle in the Square is presenting Romeo and Juliet. Sam Gold directed Shakespeare's tale of star-crossed lovers from two feuding families in Verona. Juliet is a Capulet and Romeo is a Montague. Their romance and demise occur at lightning speed against the background of warring teenagers. There's a lot of group movement and choreography that didn't seem at all interesting to me, except for one moment where Romeo seems to be leading a bizarre conga line. The casting of non-principals in multiple roles also seems to detract from the play's impact. Fortunately, Kit Connor as Romeo And Rachel Zegler, who played a similar role in Spielberg's film West Side Story. She is quite petite and very slim, so she really evoked the 13-year-old girl mentioned in the text. She also was quite at home with quick, witty, sassy comments, especially when dealing with Romeo. Romeo, is played by Kit Connor, is extremely muscular and comes across as more mature than his probable age. On the other hand, he seems fit to be a leader of his gang. I also like the staging of Juliet's bed, which is sometimes quite high above the ground, and it forces Romeo to use his upper body muscular strength to be able to see her face to face. The very modern costumes and littering the stage with teddy bears of various sizes kind of bothered me, but I guess it was supposed to make this connect with contemporary teens and young people. Despite the importance of a background of violence, it never seemed true or clearly directed. Most of the minor characters, again, didn't do anything to excite me. The exception was Sola Fadrian, who plays, Father Capulet. His mad scene, where he's extremely angry and loudly threatens his daughter, who doesn't want to marry Paris, a conceited high-level nobleman that her parents think is a perfect match for her. I should say that most of the audience around me seemed totally wrapped up in the play and enjoyed it very much. My reaction, however, is aside from the two principals, there's nothing to recommend this show. Mixed faces.
I agree with Mark. I was not impressed with this, but then again, I don't like Shakespeare, so I mean, it's got to strike against it to begin with. There was just some odd choices that the director made to either streamline it or jazz it up or whatever. But I don't know. I just and the changing of the characters into different, playing multiple roles. I just found it confusing, and I just never really felt any emotion at all for any of these people. So I'm giving it a mix too. Thornton Wilder's Our Town, the beloved American classic, is back on Broadway, this time with Jim Parsons as a stage manager, who basically lets everybody know what's going on in this town, Grover's Corner in New Hampshire. It's like, before, when there's still horse and buggies, before cars, and, there was a train whistle that they could all time themselves to, and the milkman delivering milk and talking to everybody, and the newspaper boy delivering papers and shelling beans. And there's no scenery. That this is famous as a play with no scenery because they want you to use your imagination. And it shows, George and Emily growing up next door to each other, falling in love and all that sort of thing. And the importance of, what life is, which is being born, getting married, and then dying. And it's just this wonderful story, which I did back in 1988. So this play is near and dear to my heart. So every time I see it, I'm just crying and loving it. It just touches me deeply.
And now for the other side of the coin. I was an Our Town virgin. I had never seen the play. I had never heard the play. I had never read the play. I knew absolutely nothing about the play, but I love Jim Parsons, so I wanted to see the play. And I know that Edward Albee considered it the greatest American play ever written, so my expectations were high. And I must say, I was left really sort of unmoved by it as a whole. Parsons was great. I liked some of the actors I didn't particularly care for. Acts 1 and 2 to me just were dull. They just showed nothing that I particularly cared about. Act 3, of course, which is the heavy act, anybody who's ever lost a loved one will be impacted by Act 3. I didn't cry, but a lot of the themes that came up about love and loss and grief and eternity did resonate with me. Parsons held everything together. I really did not care for the actors who played George and Emily. Emily's voice to me was like fingernails on a blackboard. Every time she opened her mouth, I cringed. And the guy that played George, who was Ephraim Sykes, he was dressed like he should have been shooting hoops on the West 4th Street basketball courts. And Emily wore a Carnaby Street miniskirt. The costuming for the vestigial characters was fairly historically accurate, but I don't know why they chose to make those two dress like complete anomalies. I will say the standout for me was Julie Halston as Mrs. Soames. She reminded me a lot of like a Joan Rivers character, and she was not on that often or for that long, but everybody in the audience cracked up whenever she opened her mouth to speak. She was great. So overall, I give the play a mixed face. It's a happy face for Jim Parsons in Act 3, and Julie Halston, and it's a saddish face for Acts 1 and 2 and the two main characters.
I find this very interesting. It also makes me wonder about, other people that have never seen it before. And in the social media phase, I think they would be bored by just hearing about just this little know-nothing town and their know-nothing life, but it was important to these people. And for me, I'm just so prejudiced, having been in the thick of this play, that I just, no matter any version I've ever seen, and I've seen some weird versions of this, I will always love this play. I give it, obviously, a happy face. A happy, nostalgic face is what I give it. Death Becomes Her, with book by Marco Pinette, music and lyrics by Julia Madison and Noel Carey, is based on a 1992 film of the same name that starred Meryl Streep and Goldie Hawn. The film was not a critical success, but became a cult favorite. Madeline Ashton, played by the hilarious Megan Hilty, is a self-involved fading stage and screen star, and dowdy Helen Sharp, played by Jennifer Samard, is a would-be author. They are the best of frenemies. Madeline likes to feel superior to Helen's drab existence, but to her horror, Helen has a plastic surgeon fiancé and is happy. This will not do. Let the games commence. Things get completely out of hand. Adding to the mix is Viola Van Horn, played by Michelle Williams from Destiny's Child. She's a very mysterious woman who has a magic potion that grants beauty and eternity, which comes in handy later. And we should say that the plastic surgeon is played by Christopher Sieber.
This musical has all the makings of a hit musical. It has a very, very funny book by Marco Pinette, great music and lyrics by Julia Madison and Noel Carey, and hysterical performances. Megan Hilty plays the actress Madeline Ashton with such great panache. And Jennifer Samard is even better as Helen, the author. And she has such precision comic timing. And Josh Lamont practically runs away with acting honors for his hysterical scene-stealing performance as Madeline Ashton's aide-de-camp. Another highlight are the glorious costumes by the brilliant Paul Tazewell. This musical is just plain good fun. Major happy face.
Oh, I totally agree with you. It's like, I never saw the movie, so I don't know anything about it. So I went into it completely cold, and I was just blown away, especially like you say, Paul Tazewell's costumes. It's like he painted the costumes on them. I was like, how did he do that? How do they wear these things? I mean, they were like, it was magic. It was truly magic. And the two of them, oh my God, those two, they should take their show on the road. They should host the Golden Globes. They're just so damn funny together. And Christopher Sieber as this nebbishy guy was so hilarious. I love this. I'm giving this a major happy face too.
Sunset Boulevard is being revived at the St. James Theater. The music is by Andrew Lloyd Webber, the book and lyrics by Don Black and Christopher Hampton, and this production is directed by Jamie Lloyd. In Sunset Boulevard, down-and-out writer Joe Gillis gets involved with the former silent film star Norma Desmond in Hollywood 1949. He works on the overlong, wretched screenplay of Salome that she hopes will be the vehicle for her return after many years to film acting. He also meets script reader Betty Schaefer, who is engaged to his friend Artie. Betty likes a downbeat story, Dark Windows, that Joe published in a magazine. She wants to work with Joe to turn it into a successful screenplay. Although Norma is very proud, she thinks she's the greatest star of all, and she's still big. It's the movies that got small. She is also extremely vulnerable. Joe finds himself guilt-tripped into being her lover and accepting expensive gifts. Her valet, Max, who has a long history with Norma, tries to protect her from the world outside. From the opening prologue, where we see Joe emerging from a body bag, we know things will not end well. In the past, I thought of Sunset Boulevard as a so-so musical from a great film. Its main appeal was as a vehicle for great older actresses like Glenn Close. This brilliant production rethinks the whole property. It's a brilliant full evening dance event, which is reminiscent of Bob Fosse's work and intentions, but without copying any of his moves. Choreographer Fabiana Louise has come up with an exciting and surprising new moves. The costumes are mostly all black and white combinations that seem like today's rehearsal outfits. There's no attempt to evoke 1949 by costuming or hairstyles. There is no set to suggest Norma's mansion or any other places. Only the cameras, which project live action, black and white images of the performers, convey any sense of 1949 filming. The stripped down aesthetic works like Ivo van Hove's deconstruction, X-ray staging, to emphasize the core of the plays he works on. This production, while eschewing sets and naturalist trappings, is still extraordinarily rich in other ways. Lighting and shadow effects are magnificent, feeling towards the end, especially like German expressionist work. While this approach will not appeal to everyone, I was totally wrapped and bowled over. Nicole Scherzinger, who plays Norma, has a strong voice and an amazing physical presence. Almost every second she's on involves a degree of stylized posturing. She's very much a silent film diva in her home life. David Paxton as Max always seems to be aware of how much we cannot fully understand until later in the show. Tom Francis as Joe and Grace Hodgett Young as Betty are simpler, more normal, and more realistically presented. While we care about their work and plans, the show comes electrifyingly alive basically when Norma and Max are on. I really appreciate this extraordinary production that makes a somewhat tired, ordinary musical into an awesome event. I gave it a major happy face plus.
Before this even started, I says to Mark, I says, you are going to love this. I am going to hate this, because I knew it was going to be like Ivo van Hove, because Jamie Lloyd, the director, is just, he's just as bad as far as I'm concerned. And sure enough, Mark loved it. I just despised it. It was so icky and stupid and annoying and just like, again, it's all director, me, look at me, what a brilliant director I am. I'm making everything so interesting because I'm such a fabulous avant-garde director. Who cares about the text? Who cares about anything? I mean, I did not care about any of these people at all. It was so presentational. And I'm sorry, that black and white filming, it was like a stupid video thing, like a documentary. It had nothing, nothing made me feel 1949. It's like, why even mention 1949? They should have even brought up the year. If you're not going to make it 1949, then just don't mention the year because you're like, all right, I'm trying to feel 1949, but all I feel is garbage. And also, Nicole, I heard Nicole sing that song. I can't remember the song that's famous from it, but I heard it on YouTube. And it was quiet and nice, and it wasn't this shouty screaming in your face, and which makes people want to stand up and shriek and like, oh, it's like Jennifer Hudson. Oh, she can scream and shriek her music. Oh, isn't she talented? No, I hated it. The only good thing about it, the only person I felt anything for it was David Thaxton as Max, because he played a real person. He was not like some presentational, like chalkboard, like chess moving thing. He actually cared about Norma. He actually had real emotions. I mean, you actually felt something from him like he was a human being and not some manipulated director choice. So no, this was to me just despicably awful.
Well, again, I thought it was quite wonderful. And Nicole gets plenty of chances to really show her voice. It's not always super loud. And I thought the casting, I forget the actress, as the younger version of Norma, flitting in and out of consciousness is really a way of examining how Norma thinks, how she feels, how conflicted she is about aging, but determined because she knows that she was the greatest star to come back and prove, history wrong, that silent film can live on again. Again, I just find his productions exciting and refreshing.
Well, I had my ears plugged the entire time people were singing because it was so overamped. And quite frankly, go to YouTube. You can hear Patti LuPone and Glenn Close sing all these songs, and it just makes you appreciate how much better they were in doing it in a real production. I don't even like Andrew Lloyd Webber, but my gosh, I mean, I'm giving this like a beyond unhappy face. So our next show will be January 11th, where hopefully I will be out of this hospital gown in this rehab center. I'll be kicking my heels up, my new knee, and we'll be bringing you a brand new show in a brand new year. So everyone have a wonderful holiday and New Year's, and looking forward to lots more theater.